Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Furious 7, starring Vin Diesel, Paul Walker, may you rest in peace, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, Michelle Rodriguez, Tyrese Gibson, Chris Ludacris Bridges, Jordana Brewster, Jimon Hounsou, Tony Jaa, Ronda Rousey, Kurt Russell, and Jason Statham, directed by James Wan. Now, before I get into this review, this is what happened. Paul Walker died while the filming of this movie, and James Wan went back to horror eventually because of this movie. And he did eventually go make that mediocre film Aquaman, but is this the movie that should end Paul Walker's career? Unfortunately, may he rest in peace. Let's find out. We see Owen Shaw lying down at a hospital bed while his brother Deckard Shaw, whom I'm going to call Shaw throughout the series, and played by Jason Statham, as he destroys the building while beating up on some guards, which was the funniest opening I've seen in a Fast and Furious movie. Meanwhile, back in Los Angeles, Dominic Toretto, returned by Vin Diesel, shows Letty, returned by Michelle Rodriguez, Race Wars, which both he and she invented before the first film, but she can't remember at this point as she races another racer, and as she wins, Hector, remember him from the first film? I kinda do, when I first saw this in theaters, gets punched by her, and she goes to her grave as Dom almost destroys it as she's trying so hard to remember her past, and she takes off to find herself as Brian O'Connor, returned by Paul Walker for the last time, may he rest in peace, is drops his son Jack off at school, and I felt bad for not only Paul Walker because of his death, but the director James Wan that he had to go through that. Luke Hobbs, returned by Dwayne The Rock Johnson, is back at his office with as Elena, returned by Elsa Pataki, and he goes back to find Shaw as he blows him off as Hobbs tries to get his attention, and they start fighting until Hobbs, which was kind of funny, saves Elena's life from a bomb. Shaw threw at Hobbs and lands with a broken arm, and I like the introduction of these characters as they're great to see again, but it did feel weird and sad to see Paul Walker back for one final time because of his death. Brian gets in a car with Jack as Dom gets a package that turns out to be a bomb sent by Shaw as Mia, returned by Jordana Brewster, is having another baby, and which is a plot point that will come back a little bit later. And the house blows up, and Dom goes to the hospital to visit Hobbs while watching The Incredible Hulk on the TV. And he learns Hobbs has a daughter, and Owen has a big bad brother. And remind me, is Deckard an English name or an any name? Because I get the impression it means destruction, as Dom wants to go after Shaw and bring Han home from Tokyo, as he talks with Sean, returned briefly by Lucas Black, as he gives Dom the cross-neck thing for Giselle, and Brian wants to find out who the killer is, while Mia wants to tell Brian she's pregnant again, but she can't because she believes he'll be disappointed in her, and that conflict is an interesting choice. They have a funeral for Han with Roman Pierce, returned by Tyrese Gibson, Tej Parker, returned by Chris Ludacris Bridges, and Brian, as Shaw happens to be there as Dom goes after him, and as a car match as almost fights until a man in a suit comes in, which I'll explain in the next segment. But Dom is the toughest of them all, and I like that they played chicken with each other in the first 30 minutes. Really does make me miss Paul Walker in the next two movies, and the returning characters, or maybe three depending on what you think, and the returning characters are great to see back, even the ones I didn't expect to see ever again. The man in black is Mr. Nobody, played by Kurt Russell, as he wants to get Shaw as much as Dom does, but first gets a beer with Dom as he explains how to get Shaw, as well as a hacker named Ramsey, played by Nathalie Emmanuel. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Please forgive me. In God's Eye, and I like Kurt Russell in this role of Mr. Nobody, as he explains how to get a shadow, which is Shaw, and gives Dom his team, as well as Letty. And how did they switch clothes rather quickly? And I'm talking about the crew, not Letty. And this is turning into a spy series that happens to be stupid and ridiculous, but this whole series is ridiculous in general. They get cars in the air and fly to the streets to get Ramsey, God's Eye, and Shaw, and the cars flying is the stupidest ideas I've ever seen in a Fast and Furious movie, as well as putting a parachute on the cars. And I thought, how in the hell did they come up with this as an idea? And I thought, give me a break. Like my father did too when I took him to see this one time. Like, there's no way in hell that could happen in real life. Just no freaking way. They race to get Ramsey, God's Eye, and Shaw as they find Shaw as well as Junkonde, played by Jimon Hounsou, as he's been in so many big movies like in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the DC Extended Universe, as well, and A Quiet Place, as well as in that sequel. And he sends out Kiet, played by Tony Jaa, to go after one of the crew members, which happens to be Brian, who goes in the truck and fights with Kiet and proves to him he's too slow as he escapes the big truck alive as he gets Ramsey out of there. But they don't get Shaw or God's Eye as Dom knocks out Ramsey by falling down a mountain. And this action scene is so stupid, it's hilarious. Ramsey wakes up as they ask her where God's Eye is at, and she trusts them by reading what their personalities are, and they go to the city in the Middle East as Tej and Roman stare at Ramsey, while Letty says to them they act like fourth graders, which was kind of funny. And Ramsey is encountered by a contact who sold God's Eye to a prince and throws a party in a penthouse as they go to and finds a car that's stuck up there, while Letty finds a vault as Tej and Ramsey hacks the cameras, while Roman causes a distraction, while Dom and Brian get something from the car, and Letty fights some guards, including Kara, played by Ronda Rousey. And that was a brutal fight between Letty and Kara, but it would have been better if I could actually see the damn fight. Cameraman, hold the freaking camera still, please, or else I'll ding your movie for that reason alone. Dom and Brian steal the car, and the hacking gets hacked, and Shaw shows up and shoots the car as they jump out of the building to another building. And the problem with that scene is cars can't fly. How much more ridiculous can this movie get? Brian grabs the thing Ramsey asked for as Dom jumps out of the car and almost kills himself as he jumps out in time as the car has no brakes. No freaking brakes. That's so freaking stupid. Mr. Nobody gets the God's Eye and Ramsey finds Shaw for Dom, and Dom and Brian with Mr. Nobody and comes in with his team to go get Shaw to capture him, as Shaw gets out and have another shootout with Mr. Nobody's team shot dead, and Mr. Nobody is shot but not dead as they leave him in the middle of nowhere as he calls for backup to pick him up in a helicopter as Brian and Dom get out of the Middle East back to America. And that's the last we've seen of Mr. Nobody until the next movie. But all this action is tiring me half to death. Dom figures out a plan with everyone, even Ramsey, for one last action scene in this movie. Brian makes a call to Mia as he tells her to move on with Jack. And finally, she tells Brian she's pregnant with child number 2, and he says he loves her like he was going to die. But unfortunately, Paul Walker is dead for real, so the scene really made me sad for that reason alone, as this is not the movie to end Paul Walker's career, but life is life, unfortunately. So he won't be able to film the next 2 or 3 movies for that matter. The final action sequence begins with Shaw trying to find Dom while the others drive around Los Angeles, while the bad guys fly around in helicopters as Ramsey jumps from Brian's car to Tej's and Roman's car, which is pretty damn unrealistic. Meanwhile, Dom and Shaw crash their cars, with Dom's car being on top, and they begin street fighting with wrenches. And Hobbs sees the explosion in Los Angeles and breaks off the cast on his arm, and that was another unrealistic scene. Like, give me a break. It's stupid and ridiculous as the cops arrive in the battle. And can I just be brutally honest here? I'm having a really hard time seeing this action, as this time it's non-stop. Roman, Tej, and Ramsey get out of the car, and Letty picks her up and leaves the 2 boys behind, and they try to get the hell out of there rather fast. Brian has a shootout with Kiet, and they have another fight, as this time Kiet is too slow, and Letty with Ramsey lose the helicopter in the tunnel, but have no luck, and Hobbs enters in and comes in as the cavalry. Ramsey is still hacking the God's Eye and makes the bad guys lose it, and Dom and Shaw still fight to the death, and the helicopter shoots at him, and Shaw gets down as Dom is still alive, as they're about to kill him, and Hobbs shoots the helicopter down, and Dom throwing a grenade and blows up the helicopter, and Dom briefly dies until Letty tells Dom she remembers everything, like when they got married to one another, and he wakes up, which was earned, but the scene was rather cheesy. Shaw is in prison now until the next movie, as they're all at the beach as Dom drives away, and the song that was for Paul Walker is playing, and I'm not too crazy about that song, but Brian goes after Dom and says their final goodbyes, and the climax is sad as the scene with Paul Walker made me sad. So here's what I gotta say at this point. Rest in peace, Paul. Rest in peace. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 5.8 out of 10. The plot is ridiculous, stupid, and the action felt tiresome after a while, but 2 hours and 17 minutes, plus the unrated, of it did kind of stress me out. There were times I thought, give me a break, when they do things that don't feel realistic, like the cars flying, for example. I'm dreading the next 3 movies in the future, Part 10. Yes, they're planning on making it after Part 9, but I don't know who's going to be in it, to be fair. They're becoming less about plot, and this is not the movie to end Paul Walker's career, as the scenes with him are sad at best. The movie is fine, but his scenes are sad to watch. And I say for this, Paul, may you rest in peace, pal. May you rest in peace. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with the Fate of the Furious. And until next time, let's race. And may you rest in peace, Paul.